How many people out there either currently are using FCC as a lender or in the past have used FCC as a lender? How many people? Yeah, quite a few, myself included. So, I think what FCC has done over the last little while, and when I say a little while, I'm talking a generation almost now.
Yeah, 65 years.
Yeah, I'm talking about my lifetime.
Oh, okay. Then only 45, Keith, only 45.
Yeah, let's go with 45. Let's go with
Okay,
45. Certainly, the way that they've reinvented their role within agriculture, as you should, has been fantastic. So I was given a list of questions to ask, but here's my list I'm going to ask. They're vastly different. But I think, Justine, for the audience, just to get started, people understand that Farm Credit Canada is an arm's length division of the government. They understand that aspect. But really, I'm wondering if you can just maybe let them know really what your relationship is with the government, how you interact with the government, not just AAFC, but possibly other ministries. Just maybe give people an idea of how you interact with the government, who controls what you do, so to speak.
Yeah, no. So first of all, really pleased that you and I are able to have this conversation, because you're on your 1 year as well, right? So we're kind of tag teaming this one. So to start, Keith, as you said it, Farm Credit Canada is a Crown corporation. So we operate at arm's length. So we're solely owned by the government, but what that really means is we're given a mandate, and our mandate is really to do what we need to serve the industry. And I think what you're trying to get at with the question is, I report into the Minister of AFC. We have regular interactions with them. And I guess what I'd say to the audience, what's kind of neat when you work in a Crown, and I think that's what brings a lot of pride to everybody that works at FCC, is you find yourself in this unique position, right? Because part of our job is, if there is a policy that comes into place, to kind of support the industry with it. But then also, we're so close to the customer, right? So we end up having this really important role to actually give feedback back to the federal government. And if you listen to the panel we just had, this challenge of telling the story and making sure that we understand the subtleties within the different industries becomes an element that we can really hopefully support with and help with. And what that allows us to do then is, when we are looking for different products and services, because we've got boots on the ground, we've got people right across Canada, hopefully that is reflected with some of the folks in the room that operate with FCC, but we tend to have a pretty good pulse on what's going on. So if something needs to be adjusted, then we're really well positioned to be able to do it.
Yeah, excellent. And just before we continue on, I do want to give a shout out to two of your key cogs who those of us in the audience are very familiar with. Of course, Darlene McBain is everywhere, but let's not forget about Todd and the work that he does as well. And those two people have done a fantastic job of continuing that relationship building with the people on the ground.
Well, definitely. And the other point I think that's also really coming out through this session that we're having is, once upon a time, from a Crown perspective, you had your minister, and that's who you engaged with, right? Everything to do with ag and food. But what we're talking about is things are getting more complex, right? You talk about climate, you talk about innovation. So what that means and how we're responding to that, and that's a lot of the work that I do in Ottawa, it's expanding actually who we speak to. Right, so I'll go around and I'll speak to the different deputy ministers, if anything, to say, are you aware of some of the trends that are happening in ag? We've heard stories. Janelle was certainly inspiring this morning about how nature and ag can actually contribute to solving the problem. It's really important that ECCC understands that. So that's an area where we're hoping that we can play that part and essentially connect the dots.
And I think that's really important, because it's not just the fact that you're a lender to agriculture clients. What does that mean? And that description is changing every day. Mm-hmm. And a couple of weeks ago at Egg Day in Canada, you had a very successful event here in Ottawa, the Future of Food. And I know that you talked a lot about the significance of health, hunger, climate, and the economic opportunity that's rooted within the industry here in Canada. I just wondered if you could expand for the audience, just what were your takeaways from that? First of all, where are we going with that conversation? and what were your takeaways from the day around those subject matters?
Yeah, so I had the pleasure of opening the conference, and it was all rooted around innovation, right? So what we presented to the audience, and this is very much a reflection of those folks in the room that I've had the distinct pleasure to meet throughout the last year and giving us tons of feedback, is that when you think of the industry of ag and food, what we were sharing is it's the industry that's probably the best position to solve 4 major global problems. So you've got health, you've got hunger, you've got climate, and a huge engine to economic growth. And it's not just one after the other, it's actually simultaneously that it can do it. So the challenge to the audience was, can you think of another industry that even has that ability to do that? And from my perspective, the answer was no. And then the second piece was, so if you take a step back and you look at it, we really have a generational opportunity, right? So it's about like the strategic nature of this sector, not only for Canada, for the world, and the call to action was, let's get going, right? So we've talked a lot about collaboration. The different panels over the last couple of days have talked about how do we kind of move to action, right? Which is easier said than done. But essentially, that was the message that we delivered. It's this powerhouse that's sitting in this room that has delivered time and time again and has this huge opportunity to make a huge impact globally. And that's what we were hoping to have the conversation with. And then what came out of that, right, with the panels, is we had tons of stories with innovations that we're seeing across Canada. We talked about leadership on some of the panels, some of the opportunities from an Indigenous perspective. So it kind of gave a nice range and overall during the day of how you can connect those dots and the impact that we can really have.
And I think, for farmers and ranchers across the country, I think some of our frustration is the lack of recognition of all the things beyond just growing food that we provide. And I think there's a real opportunity, at least we feel there's a real opportunity where, Farm Credit Canada can help provide that gap in linking with government about recognizing the opportunities that we have. And so we certainly appreciate the work that you and your team are doing. So you've now been immersed in Farm Credit for a year. Mm-hmm. And I know a big part of your early entrance into Farm Credit was probably just understanding what all is involved, right? It's a big learning curve, but after having a year now in Farm Credit, how do you envision Farm Credit getting deeper into the world of agriculture and not only from a lender perspective, but from an industry side, how do you feel Farm Credit can help the industry move forward?
So I'm gonna, if you forgive me, I want to read a sentence to this audience, and I probably need coaching from Janelle because she obviously really knew her text well, and I thought this morning, okay, this I think is important to share with this audience, and then I'll tell you where it comes from. So the tagline is, ag and food needs all of us. And the sentence in terms of an aspiration is the following. So we need to be bold in making Canada a global leader in food security and sustainable food production by driving innovation, being a catalyst for value creation in the ecosystem, and enhancing Canada's brand abroad. So we're gonna do that because we wanna be bold, we wanna be a catalyst, and we wanna be resilient. So when I woke up this morning, because Keith warned me last night that he wasn't gonna follow any of the questions that Lori prepared for him, I said I have to kind of snap back. This is a sentence that at FCC, probably around June, after having done a whole bunch of consultations across Canada, which included some people in this room, this is the new aspiration that we've given ourselves at FCC. And from there, what we've done is we've been taking a look at our strategy. So everything that's brought us to today, and some of you and many of you are customers that's made us successful, if there's one word that I probably heard over 7,000 times last year, is we need more. So it was like, how do we define what more means? And this is what we came up with. And then it's through that we are, over the next 12 months, gonna define what that more is going to look like. So we're using it internally as a source of inspiration, because everything that's brought us to today has been super fantastic. But given what's going on around the world and the opportunity we think is out there, we realized that we too need to take a look at our own business and how we're doing it to see how we can be different.
So let me tap into the more part.
Yeah.
And that's great that you're looking to do more. But maybe give us some insight, if you can, on how does that look? What is it that FCC is going to do to accomplish the more? How do you get there?
So first is we've got to continue what we've always done and always do it better. So that's super important, that the more doesn't mean that we're going to stop or slow down what's brought us to today. If I may, Keith, one of the specific examples I have, and some of you in the audience may be aware, for the last 15 years, FCC's actually invested in different funds across Canada that support agriculture. So as we went out, what we heard is, this is great, FCC, what you're doing, but we need more. And the more was, why aren't you investing yourselves? So as of April 1, FCC is gearing up to actually have a private equity shop. And this is an example of how we are going to put our money where our mouth is in terms of directly investing in innovative solutions that will make them their way to the farming community and to the producers in order to be able to solve the problems. So that's an example of something that's been actively worked on that now we're going to step into to be able to be more holistic in terms of what we can offer as an example.
So keeping with that theme, so to speak, so for the last, I'll say decade, it's probably been longer, but climate change has been the big conversation in society in general.
Yeah.
And certainly agriculture has taken its lumps around the climate change conversation. But I think we've been able to turn the corner and move away from a direct climate change conversation to more of a sustainability-based initiative. So with that being a big, I'll say, priority for not only regulators, but also for the industry as a whole, how does that fit into FCC's plans going forward? And what are you going to be looking for from your customers on the sustainability front?
So some of you might be aware, I mean, the way we've tackled it to begin with is, one, recognizing that every subsector is different, right? So, and that's been a theme that we've heard over the last couple of days. Second, what we've done is we fundamentally believe that the solutions come from you, right? You understand those best practices, and as you work with your different associations, we've been partnering with them in order to support the best practices. And you may have seen over the course of the last couple of years where we've done a partnership with Dairy Farmers of Canada, the Beef Sustainability Program. Yep. We recently launched one with Ducks Unlimited for the grasslands. And the idea there is recognizing what those best practices are, those that sign up for those best practices and are able to demonstrate them, actually FCC's contribution turns into us doing a refund of interest paid against your loan for a value of up to $2,000. So that's one of the starting points that we have. And I guess, Keith, to your question about what are we going to be looking for, our first perspective is what's actually needed to support you to get there. So back to, we understand that there's going to be investments that are going to be needed, so we'd like to play a part in that. And some of those investments are longer term, right? And that's, I think, one of the challenges. So how can an FCC, with some of its financing solutions, be that catalyst, so to speak, or to be able to kind of ride that wave with its constituents is some of the thinking that we're working through to be able to see how we can come up with some solutions that actually support this transition. We're not looking to say, hey, if you don't do this, then you won't be able to have FCC support anymore. And especially with this sector, I would say, with so many best practices that are coming out from the different industries, there's actually an opportunity to enhance and support those best practices. And that's the mindset that we're aiming to bring to the table.
So building on that, you're right. It's a long-term look at things.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, that brings me to talking about, youth in agriculture or young farmers. So, where's FCC looking? What are they thinking about as far as getting young farmers engaged in the industry and really getting their feedback on how we move this industry forward? What are you looking at from the young farmer perspective?
So a couple of things. Well, first of all, we're really proud that I think we have almost 21,000 young farmers as customers. I think the biggest segment in all of Canada. So we're really proud about that. And we know, because I see what those young farmers are staring at me right there. I met them yesterday. This is not enough. And actually, the conversation we had yesterday and where we started is, first, we're looking at coming up with some products, right? We have a young farmer loan to try to help young farmers actually enter into the industry. We all know in this room, you know it better than I do, the way prices are going up, even some of the limits of those loans may not be enough, right? But what was really fascinating, and I do want to take the opportunity to thank the young farmers that took the time to meet with us yesterday, is where we started in terms of doing some of the advisory work that we have or talking about transition. We started this doing a long time ago, but now what we're hearing is that we need to do more, right? So the feedback I received yesterday was, Justine, it's great when FCC can be that catalyst, either because you come in with the financing so that I can buy into the family farm or another enterprise. And then if there's a case of a transition and you can start that conversation, the challenge now we're having is to carry it through. So it's things like that when we can get that feedback, we can go back and say, okay, we started at a point in time with a product or a support, but if the needs in the industry are changing, I think what I'm trying to say, Keith, is we got to be able to change faster to support. And the other thing too, which is important, because there's a lot of partners in this room, and FCC doesn't do this alone, right? MNP and the bankers in the room, all of us are trying to do what we can. So this other element is being a partner. And when I say about being a catalyst, that's what we mean. So sometimes FCC may not be the one that has the full solution, but if we can be the one that bring the players to the table so that based on that feedback, we can make progress, we're equally, if not even more proud of that, because then it helps the entire industry go where it needs to go or wants to go.
So, looking at the realities of today and the world we're living in today, getting young farmers in particular more engaged is really important. But we're also starting to navigate through financial times, and more specifically interest rates that we haven't seen for 20 years.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, my first mortgage was 19.5%. So when I look at 5 and 6% today, I go, whatever, But putting it into perspective of today's reality, that's high interest rate.
Yeah.
So how do you see, you as a lender helping young farmers, but all farmers, navigate around the added stress of the financial perspective and where interest rates are going and disposable income are going today?
I hope you're not like Sear asking me that if I can be the governor of the Bank of
Nobody's
Canada.
like Sear.
Okay, thank
Nobody's
you. Yeah,
like
that's
Sear.
true. That's true. Yeah, thank God for that, eh?
You said it, I didn't. But it is recorded.
It is important, yes, yeah. So in terms of navigating it, I mean, there's two elements to it. And, you said earlier, I was in I just finished my first year. And one of the things I have to share really struck me at FCC, which is a great deal of pride, is it's the proactivity that people have on the ground at FCC, right? So when interest rates started to hike, our team on the ground reached out quite proactively, and believe it or not, the vast majority of the FCC books, so to speak, the rates were locked in, right, to kind of prevent that. So when you ask about what does an organization like FCC do, I think when we start to see kind of the seas changing a little bit, our teams are super eager to reach out, go and see their customers, understand what's going on, and then if there's something that we can do and customize it, we do. We did it not only for the interest rates, we did it for, we've created some special programs like for the pork industry, maple syrup, blueberries, some of the buying back of the herds in Western Canada. All of these programs were put in place last year because things were changing and changing fast. So I'd say that element of proactivity is huge, and I think it's one of our secret ingredients. The other one is, and it kind of connects a little bit to around young farmers, is the notion of value add and how we see it is the advice, right? So you get the loan, but what do you do between year 1 and year 5 when things are coming along? And I think for an organization like FCC, we got to double down on that, right? Like, how do we help you ride the wave? And we can help ride the wave because we have advice. We can help ride the wave if we can bring up with some different tools. And an example is like we have a benchmarker tool that can help you kind of compare in terms of how you're doing against others. So those elements combined through the relationship of your account manager is how we're aiming to show up and show up more with all of our customers across the country.
So I realize that we're running short on time, and this conversation is great. I mean, I could sit up here for a long time and fire questions at you. But, you know, really the reason why we wanted to do this today is just to make sure that our membership understands that we value the relationship with Farm Credit Canada and CFA. But I do have a final question, and this is where the curveball comes, because we weren't expecting this. What does Justine do away from Farm Credit Canada? Does she have special interests? Does she read books? Does she go axe throwing? So tell us about the non-Farm Credit Canada Justine.
Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah, that is a curveball, Keith. I'm going to get you back for that one day.
But Justine, in all fairness, really it's about the people behind the product, and I mean that's been really what I've valued in this role, is getting to know the people behind the organizations that are partners with us, and getting to know the people themselves. So that's why I threw the question.
No, it's a totally fair question. So who is Justine from Five?
We all want to know.
We all want to know who Justine is. I think folks at
So do Darlene and Todd.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. They're wondering too. So Justine actually lives in Ottawa. So obviously the head office of FCC is in Regina, and I go there on a regular basis. I'm talking about myself in the third person. Imagine that. So I'm a mom. I've got 3 kids. I've got 3 girls. I got 14-year-old twins and an 18-year-old. So they all think they can rule the world. But Janelle's going to help me in terms of leadership and so forth. And I also have my dad who's with me at home. And he came to live with me a couple of years ago when Mom passed. And he got diagnosed with Parkinson's. So I'm in kind of that sandwich phase, and and I'm a single mom too, just to pile it on. So when I'm not on the road, right, it's usually on the weekends. What do? Groceries, walking the dogs, running to activities, and taking care of all of that. But what I love is my girls over the years, I've been very cherished because they're probably my biggest cheerleaders. So I think even this morning when I was waiting for the breakfast, one of the twins is actually in Costa Rica right now on a trip with school, kind of help a community. And her twin, who's usually the lazy one in the family, is responsible to get up and give dad his medication, right? So it'd be like, sweetheart, like, mommy's got to go to this thing. I got to be at the CFA. So it's cute, right? Like, so when I was waiting with Darlene, the phone rings and it's FaceTime and it's Celeste with my dad. And they're like, you go get him, Mom. You know you can do it, and so forth. So that's kind of what happens behind the scenes, right? I'll say I'm a mom, right? I'm a mom and I'm a daughter, and I've got a father that's getting old. And they are my biggest cheerleaders. They love to give Todd a hard time, right, Todd? In terms of, you got to do more, Todd. You got to do more for this industry. And quite frankly, that's what kind of keeps me going. So actually, thanks for asking the question.
So what I heard out of that, and I know a lot of people in the audience will relate, is daughters still need their daddies, right? They still need their daddies. Well, I have 3 daughters as well, so I can relate. So, look, Justine, this is great. Like I said, I wish we could have more time. This has been great. Again, we appreciate the relationship with Farm Credit Canada. Hopefully it continues forever and a day, but thank you for taking a few minutes just to talk about FCC and what's going on, and we appreciate it very much.
And you make the staff at FCC, I have to tell you, I have yet to see an organization where staff are so proud every day because of actually what everybody in this room does, right? So thank you, and thank all of you. Keep it up. And thanks for the feedback, because believe me, we're going to be bold, we'll be resilient, and we're committed to making sure that we can be here for a long time to come.
And that's recorded, and we're going to keep it to it.
Exactly. Performance review.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Justine. Thank you very much.